it says shovel ready, almost shovel ready, nowhere near shovel ready. Maybe that way everybody can understand. I guess that's what your color code is, right? I like shovel ready.
I like green.
It's a good idea.
Green means go.
Go. Green means go.
Keywords, not just colors.
Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation. We'll move on to item number 6. Discussion and action to approve the use of an electronic project request form, project readiness report, project schedule, project financial summary, and sponsoring agency resolution.
Good afternoon. The items were presented to the Technical Advisory Committee. We reviewed and discussed, and our recommendation would be to approve.
Motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Presentation?
This is for item number 6.
Number 6. Yes. Do
Can you
we,
bring up the flow chart, please?
we had a. Okay. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor say, and then they can present, because there's a motion and a second. Okay, so we can move on to the vote.
For a vote.
I don't know who made the second. I don't know who made the second, but can you maybe rescind the second?
Can we rescind the second so we can hear the presentation?
I will rescind the second.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Now we have discussion.
I proceed with the presentation. Okay,
Yes.
good afternoon. I'll give a quick overview. I'll give a quick overview of how the transportation projects move through our program call process. So step 1, the project sponsors submit the project using our electronic project request form. This kicks off the review process for the tax subcommittee. In part A, the tax subcommittee evaluates basic MTP tip inclusion eligibility, such as project location, functional classification status, project schedule, agency resolution, and then they score the project using a selected scoring criteria for project readiness, regional significance, congestion management, performance measures, safety, etc. Then we have a part B, which shows a continuous review process of the project readiness report, which shows which looks at the project development status for the execution of AFAs, environmental review, preliminary engineering, right-of-way, and utilities. This is done to ensure projects are moving and letting on time in hopes to reduce the carryover. After the tax subcommittee evaluates the project application, it then goes to the Technical Advisory Committee, TAC, for approval of recommendation. And then finally, the policy board reviews the TAC recommendation and makes the final call on whether to award the funding. Happy to answer any questions.
And in my defense, on the item, the item before does. I'm just saying.
It's true.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I can just elaborate on the item. And so the goal here is that when we develop a new MTP and its corresponding tip, is that we will ask the sponsoring agency to submit what we call the project request form. On this request form, as we say, as the entire, we're asking for everything. The goal with the request form is to capture as much information as possible. We understand that project development is very, difficult. It's hard to navigate sometimes, and something like functional classification can derail a lot of things. So it gives us an assessment of the problem when it's being submitted to us for consideration. That report will feed the project readiness report. It's the presentation that was shown previous to this item. That would give us a true assessment where the project is at the current state. That would also give us a true indication of how to properly fund this project. So one of the things here is that we also have to demonstrate that whenever there's a project phase, that there is a construction component to that. So when we submit projects for construction, we have to have the construction project too, in order to have a phase to be developed in coordination with the construction. Along with this is that we would ask a project schedule if the project is going to be funded. We would ask for a resolution. And then at the end, there's always one item I forget, and it is the funding summary of said project. So what we're looking for here is that if there's a municipality that is submitting a project, we would just like to understand how the entity is paying for this. Is it captured through a capital improvement program? Are there COs, bonds, things of that nature? Because once we, the MPO, develop the planning documents, it goes for review to the federal partners, correct? And they will look at our balances, they will look at our forecast, and they will ask these questions. Does municipality A, county B, whoever it is, have the availability of funding?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have a second? A second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Ms. Doring,
Yes.
motion
President.
carries.
And before we move on to the other item, would it be possible for staff to print a copy of the readiness report for all of us before the end of the meeting? Because I think that's a very important document. And I know that we can go back to our office and get it printed, but if we can have it before we leave, that would be great. Thank you.
We can do that.
Thanks.
Okay. Moving on to item number 7, discussion and action to include Western Inner Loop sections A1 and A2 as non-toll facilities in the RGB MPO's Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP, unfunded project list with Hidalgo County serving as a project sponsor.
So moved.
We have a motion? Discussion?
So we received a letter, again, addressing the need to program this project in the MTP. The current practice under the federal rules is that we are allowed through this body to identify transportation priorities. Said priorities are ultimately defined in the long-range plan, which we call the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. From there, it follows a funnel, as we call it, into the Transportation Improvement Program. And that's where the real money's at, correct? Once you have a project in there, there's eligibility with something that we call the Advanced Funding Agreement of said project. Again, you can introduce a construction project if that's what it is. And within the construction project, there are federal eligibility components that you can tap in. So for example, if you have a construction project and you want to do preliminary engineering, that is an eligible activity. And again, going back to the readiness report, that's the whole functionality of that structure. So here is that when a policy board identifies set priorities, there's not always enough availability of funding. And so the federal component to this is that we are allowed as a body to identify projects not only in the MTP where we show a financial constraint component in terms of the availability of funding. This could be federal, state, or even local dollars. Or in the event that there are still high priorities that are not funded, correct? Meaning that we just don't have financial capacity inside the current Metropolitan Transportation Plan, is that we can also develop what the feds call an illustrative list. This illustrative list is a containment of projects that if we had, as they say, all the money in the world, we would incorporate into our planning documents. We know that as the unfunded project list. So in the letter that we have received is to reiterate a request that was brought forward to identify certain projects to be programmed, if you will, or included into the unfunded project list. So from the federal component is that this body is allowed to introduce a project in the unfunded project list. Is there any questions from there?
So Michael, can any action be taken as far as AFA's execution of agreements and things of that nature if it's in the unfunded list?
So it is, the state of practice is this, is that once your MTP is identified to be financially constrained, it allows the policy board to identify further strategies, right? We identify those projects in the tip. There is another planning document, right? This one is reserved at the state level that we call the Unified Transportation Program. It is a 10-year plan, not to be confused with a cash flow, right? It's for us to do planning. Again, is that under the federal rules, we, the MPO, utilize the UTP as a mechanism to also develop a 10-year plan. That's part of the requirement. And so we set these priorities within the first 10 years, as we say in the plan. The UTP, through the TxDOT Commission, they identify the caps, right? So from category 1 all the way to category 12, they pass a minute order. And in this minute order, they identify the set funding within the first 10 years, which again, we call the UTP. Along with that, they identify projects. So these projects that are in the UTP gives us capacity to execute AFAs with the state. So essentially, the state of practice is that when you have a project identified in the fiscally constrained tip, any portion in the financially constrained MTP, it is my experience, that's where the AFA is executed.
So in summary, if there is no funding identified for the project, fully funded project, we cannot execute an AFA.
So I have not seen that practice at the MPO that I worked at or even other MPOs. But again, what it does do is that it gives us capacity to examine the need, right? And so one of the things I want to reiterate, and I'm going to sound like a Fed, right? But the idea here is that we follow the 3Cs process, correct? We identify priorities. Sometimes we understand that those priorities are not the ones that we can get in the plan. Planning is an ongoing process. So here is that if this policy board identifies priorities that we need, whether they're funded or unfunded, the goal of the MPO is to identify those needs. And the opportunity for us is that we are developing the new metropolitan transportation plan. We understand that that the commission has just identified the draft of the 2026 UTP, and that becomes the base for us to do the planning. Along with that, let me just reiterate a little bit more, is that when we do the financial forecast, we also program a forecast for projects that are outside the year 11. So again, is that when we look at this examination of projects and where do we fill them in, if you will, as a functionality of the availability of funding, again, the policy board can create this illustrative list to identify projects that if we had all the money in the world, if you will, we would be able to implement them.
So just to add to the conversation, so in order for us to be able to execute an advanced funding agreement, the project has to be funded, fiscally constrained. And in order to add the said projects here to that financially constrained list, then we would have to remove projects that are currently identified as funded.
So essentially is that, and I guess let me just say this, is that in order to have an AFA, is that there has to be nexus that it is federal and state dollars that we're dealing with, correct? What I said earlier is that when we develop the MTP and the TIP, is that the money can come from all sorts of funding, what we call the cocktail of funding. It could be federal, it could be state, it could be local. It is also an allowable practice for us to submit a project in the planning documents that is totally local contribution, right? We identify that as category 3. There are MPOs that do that, right? But the practice has always been a cocktail of funding. So the way I understand the practice is that if you are seeking federal and state dollars, in order to have an AFA executed, not only does it have to be in the financially constrained metropolitan transportation plan, but also in the 10 years of said UTP.
So the action here is to place this in the unfunded project list, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And that is the preview of the policy.
I have a question. Can projects that are placed in the unfunded list be off system?
Yes, sir. So essentially what the federal rule is that we are to identify projects of regional significance. They are not looking at it from a lens of funding. So if it's a transit project, trail project, infrastructure improvement project, as long as it meets regional significance, that is, if you will, the meal ticket into the planning document.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve.
I've got a couple of comments, I guess. So I think I understand the motion before the policy board, but this motion has come to the policy board via a letter, the communication that was sent to the MPO, which we all have a copy of. And I guess there's a part that I'm not fully understanding. I heard what you said, and the policy board can take action that it chooses to take. But how do we square this with the whole discussion and the whole, what brought us to this point as to, primacy for this particular project. You know, and I lament the fact that we're having to have this discussion at the policy board level, but just so that everyone's up to speed, based on the actions that we took here and the information that we received through your office from the state, and on the whole question about primacy over this particular project, et cetera, there has been multiple efforts to come together. There was a workshop between the county, Hidalgo County, and the Regional Mobility Authority that took place, of which many of you were invited and went. That workshop produced an agreement on how we were going to move forward. And at our RMA meeting last evening, we voted not to move forward with the memorandum of understanding that we had all agreed to on that day. And we did that understanding that there's yet another issue. And we know that because of this letter that has come to the MPO, which we did get a copy. I did get a copy of. But I guess taking it back to, I believe there needs to be some more discussion or there's a disconnect here that I don't fully understand. And the letter is talking about and points out the fact that they believe, the county, and maybe Mayor Nori, your office, you signed the letter as well, that the RMA, let me make sure I'm reading it right, but it says, it is the position of the county and the city that the Hidalgo County RMA may defer primacy, but the RMA has not deferred primacy. On the contrary, we came here and we stated that we believe we have primacy. We affirmed that that's the case, and we're looking for ways to work together with the county and all the other stakeholders to move this project forward and be able to come over here and tell you that all that money that's available that needs to be moved to a project that's ready to go would be this one. But we're not there, obviously. So here we are. I would not recommend that this policy board move forward and as is being requested, I'd like the opportunity to go back yet once again and make every effort to see if we can come before the policy board unified, if you will. So that's my comments. Answer any questions or move forward from here before we take a vote.
We do have our county legal here who's been working with this and helped us draft this letter. If he can come forward, Mr. Garza, perhaps and enlighten us.
Madam Chairman, members of the policy. I appreciate the concerns, and I don't believe that relegating or approving this measure and relegating it to the unfunded list would necessarily preclude any further efforts between the local government and the RMA. At least that's my understanding. If you could add some clarification to that, it would be appreciated. I believe the county still intends to continue discussion with the RMA and the plausibility of moving forward on the project. Given the readiness report that we saw today, there's ample opportunity for funding to perhaps expedite that exercise during your August evaluations of which projects may be have more priority. It is a request from our commissioner in the county and the city of Mission to merely just designate this project as in that unfunded list. I don't think that would preclude any continued efforts with the RMA position. In fact, I've spoken with your legal counsel and expressed that to her as well, and we expect to continue with those efforts. This is an unfunded project, Mayor, as you're aware. Subject to any funding being available, it's going to be on the table. I don't know if I stated that as clearly as I could.
There's something that maybe you can help clarify, being legal counsel, but the letter comes from a commissioner in Hidalgo County. And the workshop was with yourself and the county. It's the county, not a particular commissioner. This commissioner was part of the workshop,
Yes.
but the workshop was with the county and the RMA. And today we have a letter from a commissioner. Is this the county or is this the commissioner and the mayor?
The county's aware that the letter was going to be presented again. It had previously
Well,
been presented.
was there action that went before the county, and did the county take action to come before the board and request this as it's being done?
The board,
And wouldn't there be, the normal procedure be that the county itself, the commission takes action to proceed this way? It just seems, I really am, I'm bewildered. I'm confused. I don't get it. I don't understand. And as the representative of the RMA, look, I'm a citizen of Hidalgo County and I want what's best for Hidalgo County. But I sit before you here today as the chair of the Regional Mobility Authority for Hidalgo County, and I've got to sit here and represent what I believe is, in the best interest of the citizens, and that is for the county and the RMA to continue the work and come before the board in a unified fashion so that we send a message where these funds need to come from, that we've got a unified message. I mean, this is frankly quite dysfunctional.
I've stated the same about continuing to work. I can let you know, I think everybody who's at the table appreciates that they deal with their governing boards respectively. And when we're dealing with projects that are primarily regarding one or the other precincts, there's some deferences afforded to the commissioner of the board. And I'll restate the county is aware that this letter was going to be presented for the second time.
So this is that there has been action by the county taken that is going against the workshop agreement that was agreed to. And that's a question. The county has taken action, and that is the county that's asking.
The county has not taken action with regards to the
Okay.
agreement
Okay.
with the MOU that came out of the RMA. Not yet. The county has taken no action with regards to this letter, but the county, as a governing body, is aware that it was being presented today.
Well, the last thing that I want to do is sit here and be an obstacle to the project, because I agree with you, Mayor Nori, the sooner is better than later. We're having some issues on how we get there, and, so be it, let it go to the policy board, but the RMA has not given up primacy.
And I don't think that this letter is asking for that. We understand and we are very well aware that, and we as in the city of Mission and the county are well aware that you will retain primacy, but it's still an option for the RMA for us to move forward with the planning stages of the project, of a project. That's my understanding. Am I correct?
Yes, you are, Mayor, to a degree, to the extent that going forward ultimately would turn on available funding for a project.
So-
Which we just, we are working on funding. So we're hopeful that we'll hear something very soon, as a matter of fact.
Okay,
Yes, just as a point of clarification for the city and the county, when you say moving forward with the project, it would be for projects A1 and A2 that were identified in this letter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I do feel the need to bring something to the table when it pertains to the environmental document for this projects. There are multiple projects, A1, A2, and C. In our research at the MPO's request, we were able to find a document from FHWA that talked about this projects, all three projects, being considered for environmental clearance through an EIS. environmental impact statement. It did not specify that segments of the project could be done individually. In fact, it very clearly stated in the letter from FHWA to TxDOT at the time that this shall be an EIS. In other words, the environmental document would have to be for all three segments. Is the intent from the city and the county to work on all three segments, just to clarify, so we are all on the same page?
My understanding is that we're just focusing on those two segments, not C.
And you
that
understand that
correct?
there's challenges that you're going to face and you want to face those challenges and see what you can get done during this time.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll go ahead and make this second just so we can take a vote.
And just for the record, TxDOT, Representative TxDOT will be abstaining from the vote.
Abstaining. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign?
City McAllen's gonna abstain.
City of FAR abstains.
Nori? I made the second. Do a roll call vote?
Yes. Roll call vote.
Hidalgo County,
Favor?
City of Brownsville, Cameron County, abstain. City of McAllen, City of Edinburgh. That is correct. City of Mission,
Favor.
City of FAR, City of Harlingen, abstain. City of San Benito, abstain. Starr County,
I don't know much about this project or what it entails, so I guess it would be abstain, because if I favor, and I just don't want to sound bad, but you know what I mean? I just don't know much. This is new to me. I missed last meeting, so I'll abstain.
Cameron County RMA, Hidalgo County RMA,
Against.
Valley Metro, TxDOT.
Abstain.
So I just have two in favor, Hidalgo County and City of Mission.
So the rule, whenever there's if a member abstains from voting, it does not affect the quorum. The quorum is the minimum number of members present to conduct voting. An abstention applies whenever a member is present but chooses not to vote on a motion. So being present counts towards quorum, even if the member abstains from voting. And so I need to calculate the numbers, but let me read the bylaws real quick.
2-1.
I believe it was the RMAs voted against, or they abstained, so it would be 9-2. City of Hidalgo County has 7 votes. City of Mission has 2 votes. The RMA has 1 vote. And the rule is that 75% of the votes have to, so the total votes are 11. And 75% of the votes of that is 8.25. So with the 9 votes, that's more than 75%. And so that means that the motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay. All right, we'll move on to item number 8. Discussion and action to support the Hidalgo County Active Tourism and Active Transportation Plan and to authorize RGV MPO Chair Eli Torres to execute Resolution 2025-7 confirming its adoption. Alimetro?
Yes, we do have our consultant online, who's going to be presenting on this item.
Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon, Ildiko Precioso with HAP Associates. I'm just saying hello to you on the camera, but you can go back to the presentation and I'm going to run through some of the main highlights on the Hidalgo Active Transportation and Active Tourism Plan. Adriana, are you able to pull up the presentation?
Yes, just give us a few minutes.
Yeah, sure.
You can also share your screen if you like.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Or you all should have
Yes.
a.
Yeah,
that's
we're able to
great.
see it now.
Okay, fantastic. So just really quickly, the project team was half consultants as the prime with our partners, B2C engineering and tool design, each having a particular area of focus that they looked at in the project itself. So just a quick overview of the project. The purpose of the project was really to develop a regional network of pedestrian and bike infrastructure that would help to draw for tourism activities and particular sites in various communities in and around Hidalgo County. So this was a pretty high-level plan in order to not just identify this regional trail network, but also really to establish a unified vision about why we want to do trail connection, how we can align those investments, how we can continue to collaborate in Hidalgo County as you look forward to pursuing future funding or future projects that might have some opportunities for active transportation. The project scope included about 6 different phases, which looked at the existing conditions of the trail system and network right now, both on and off street. There was a public engagement component. We then evaluated some of that public engagement through a needs assessment and then identified various trails and strategies or recommendations and an implementation agenda for the plan itself. Supporting all of that included some active tourism recommendations in order to make those connections. So this is the general study area. It was the entire area of Hidalgo County, not just the communities, so all the unincorporated areas as well. Very quickly, just want to touch on the public engagement. So there was a primary steering committee that really drove the effort. In addition to that, there was some stakeholder listening sessions that occurred both virtually and in person, as well as interviews with various active transportation stakeholders and active tourism stakeholders in the area. We also conducted an online community survey that was done in both English and Spanish, and that was for about 4 weeks. We also built a lot of the engagement off of some previous work that had just been concluded in the region through the MPO as well. Just a snapshot here of some of the listening session and interview feedback we received. So let me run through the plan framework for you. So the active plan, as it's named in short, has about 6 different chapters, and each of these highlight certain areas of the effort through the planning process. And these are outlined here on your screen. And so in chapters 1 and 2, really looked at those guiding principles and the vision. Like I said, this was a really high-level plan, really to identify where the commonalities are, where there are some opportunities and gaps, and ways that can be connected through active tourism, both looking at large areas that might have a state park or other city park that might be useful or existing trail system there. So these guiding principles really came out through the public engagement and interviews about what really are the areas that the community wanted to focus on. So the regional trail vision includes the establishment of a signature countywide trail network in Hidalgo County that connects communities, provides safe and comfortable environment for walking, biking, and other forms of active transportation, linking the users to key destinations across the county and to foster a culture of active living and enhanced transportation access throughout the lower Rio Grande Valley. In addition to the visioning and the guiding principles, we were able to also inform ourselves about some of the demographics in the area, really looking at what their transportation options are, and if there are some opportunities for connection there, as well as health and wellness, really looking at the communities and understanding that this potential idea of a regional trail network would also help to support health and wellness vision for the community. In chapters 3 and 4, we look at the actual network itself, the transportation network, and the framework for this. So we evaluated many of the existing municipal trail systems as well as the county trail system. And as a result of that, we were able to identify some potential trail segments that would provide connection or opportunity for expansion. So in looking at the various trail opportunities, we looked at some criteria, which included connectivity, whether that was connectivity to an existing system, if there were impacts to health and wellness, would be supported by the community, would increase access to the population, as well as those tourism components. In addition to the criteria, we also looked at the challenges, whether or not that would be a high-level challenge, right-of-way access, other things like that. In determining priorities for the trail segments. And so in total, there are 9 trail segments. This map here just identifies that high level network that is in this color, this like teal color called proposed trails. And I'm going to run through some of the high level ones that we identified, not all of these for them. But as you can see, this trail network is over 200 miles. So it is a very high level trail network, really intended to be able to provide a long-term vision for the region. So again, this is how we identified some of the various criteria, whether high, low, or medium, depending on the trail segment itself. And then in chapter 5, this is where we included all of the active tourism recommendations and approaches for the plan. And they looked at specifically some of the highly identified and popular destinations throughout the county. They also identified opportunities for expansion of those. Obviously, the wildlife and birding is very popular here, the cultural and heritage, but also potential environmental, or what they call ecotourism opportunities, and then also having communities participate in the National Hub Towns initiative. And then finally, in chapter 6, we identified the implementation in the short-term work program, really ways to kick off the next phase of implementing the regional trail network. And so just as a point of note, all of the information that we provided is really tried to be consistent with state and local MPO plans, other plans that have been in place, as well as complement any economic health and transportation principles as well. So there were identified 7 goals, and under each of these goals were objectives and strategies for recommendation in the plan. Like I mentioned, there were 9 trails that were identified, some of them very long, some of them a little bit shorter. Then we also scaled that down to identify what we call high impact projects that could be evaluated in the next phase for continued study. And as I mentioned, this is a high level plan. You see these dotted lines on the map. These are really intended to be more at a high level or visionary, understanding that there are some gaps in the east and west component in the valley here, and in this area between Mission and McAllen, and really identifying a way to help bridge that gap between some of these north and south areas, north and south existing trails, which is the red lines that you see on here. So this is one of the high impact areas that we believe would be a significant improvement to the trail network right now. The next one that we identified was one that would help to build that connection to your neighbors to the east in the Cameron County, with their Katakata Regional Trail that they also have, been planning for the last few years and beginning to implement as well. The third one includes, again, some more east and west connection and opportunity between Edinburgh and San Juan. Again, lots of north and south trails, and access, but very limited east and west, and really bridging that connection, or closing that gap would really make a significant improvement in the trail network as well. And then finally, one that's a little bit more off-street focused is continuing the Hidalgo County Precinct 2, I believe, trail through the southern stretch here to get down to the Llano Grande State Park, and really building that potential connection as well. And then finally, in the last chapter, we also address how to begin implementing this. And part of that really begins with making sure that there's a administration process, identification of funding opportunities, and working with the specific communities to adopt the regional plan, or accept the regional plan, use that as a basis of future work or feasibility work for their own communities. In the plan itself, we also included this implementation matrix, which again, outlines those goals, objectives, and then the specific strategies for each of those, and the rough implementation timeline, as well as the lead partner. And so, like I mentioned, from plan to implementation, the last chapter really identifies those potential key groups or leads that would need to support the plan. And here are just some additional items in order to move to the next phase of implementation, which includes key presentations like to this group, adoption of city and county resolutions, hosting a steering committee annually to keep the conversation moving about the regional plan, and then to support additional studies to move from this visionary document to actual implementation and construction of the trail. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. I just would like to say also, we very much enjoyed working with all of the communities that participated in the steering committee. They had some great insight and enjoyed learning a lot about the various communities in Hidalgo County. So thank you.
We have any questions?
Madam Chair, if I may just add, is that one of the reasons here is that we asked for this presentation to come to the policy board is that because a lot of these plans have a level of elements of regional significance, correct? So what this allows us to do is whoever the sponsoring project or the agency is for a project, they can fall back to this plan, correct? And one of the things that they can advocate in terms of submitting letters of support, if you will, is also a resolution. So understanding that this is a plan that not only serves the Hidalgo County, but it also serves as a platform for us to look at things that need to happen in terms of new plan updates, maybe in Cameron County, and then also, of course, in Starr County. The idea here, again, is to bring forth this effort before the policy board, because I do understand that these are projects that will eventually come to the MPO for funding, but there's also other federal mechanisms to fund these projects.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Madam Chair, Manny Cruz, Executive Director for the Lower Grand Valley Development Council. So this is a great plan, as you can see, it complements Cameron County's already existing plan, like Michael mentioned. I think I'm just going to reiterate what Michael said, but coming from our board, which approved it back in January 29th of this year, approved the plan. And so they would only ask for some consideration to consider an incentive for cities that adopt this plan. So they can stay within the confines of what's already written and not deviate from it. And so this could potentially be a points qualifier, if you may, for any applications that mention or further expand this plan as it is. MPO, RGV MPO and Valley Metro will be the custodians of it and will be updated periodically. But again, coming from our board of directors at the Lower Grand Valley Development Council, they're asking for this consideration.
Any further discussion? If none, we'll go ahead, entertain. Is there a motion to approve?
Valley Metro makes a motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move on to action item or item number 9. Discussion and action to approve a joint application with Cameron County for the Rural Roadway Departure Reduction Project regarding the U.S. Department of Transportation fiscal year 25 Safe Streets and Roads for All Notice of Funding Opportunity. We have our tech share.
Good afternoon. Cameron County is requesting that the MPO participate in a joint application for an implementation grant in response to the notice of funding opportunity from the 2025 SS4A. The projects proposed includes 2 roadways that were identified in the recent RGB MPO Safety Action Plan. And we're utilizing that Safety Action Plan to apply for this implementation grant.
Any further discussion, questions? If none, I'll entertain a motion. Do we have a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Item number 10, discussion and action to approve the creation and appointment of an executive committee and to begin the process of amending the RGB MPO bylaws.
I'm sure if I may just explain. One of the things that was brought before this policy board is identifying structural improvements to the said agency. One of the mechanisms here is that a lot of MPOs have executive committees. What these committees strive to do is to identify the operational components of the MPO. With that, you have a policy board that will ultimately be the decision-making body of said agency, but they also can create committees. So, for example, we have the Technical Advisory Committee. And so the TAC, as we know it here, is that it provides recommendation to the policy board on technical things related to funding, correct? One of the things here that we are trying to examine is a gateway. Obviously, the policy board here can discuss anything dealing with policy creation and implementation, but a tool that many MPOs use, it is not just exclusive to the MPO, but they have executive committees. And the said committee is made up of board members of the same body. So what we wanted to introduce here is potentially a structure of said executive committee, because this committee would make recommendations on the policy development, implementation of strategies, things of that nature. But I think more importantly is that whenever there is an assignment from the policy board, the executive committee can look at this assignment and then report back to the policy board. And so a way of doing this, of course, is if there's bylaws that have to be changed, things of that nature, this could be the vehicle for the policy board to address such things.
If I may, Madam Chair, what particular items are you contemplating reviewing that need to be amended or looked at?
So in relationship to the overall structures that we would start with the bylaws to incorporate the executive committee, the functionality of the committee or the operational definition of the committee would be to review the MPO director, review the operation of the MPO, review any potential state of practice, policies, things of that nature that ultimately affect the decision making. So those are just some parameters to work with. Again, the policy board can define and regulate anything it needs to this executive committee.
I haven't looked at the bylaws recently, so I don't have them committed to memory, but I thought when we formulated and organized the MPO, the RGB MPO, we tried to address as many contingencies. I don't recall there being a standing executive committee, which is basically what you're saying. You think that would be beneficial with regards to the additional operational, but it would not minimize, take away, or decrease the authority of the entire policy board.
Correct.
Okay.
So you're right, Judge. So what the bylaw state is that the composition of the board and sub-regional allocations cannot be changed through bylaw amendments. That will require a separate amendment to the redesignation agreement, which is kind of like the Constitution, like the broader.
Yeah, and I'm in memory, I'm trying to avoid going into that problem.
And so the test is whether this executive committee is going to affect the composition of the board or sub-regional allocations. And so it doesn't appear that would be the case, but of course that's for you all to consider. That's what cannot be changed by the policy board without first amending the redesignation agreement.
Like, we appointed a board, the mayor served, Pete served, I served with regards to the hiring, and evaluation, of the applicants when we chose you. And that was, I think, for that limited purpose, I think. But you're saying that standing committee or a standing committee could have additional tasks assigned to it by the board? Okay.
Yes, sir, by the board.
I'm sure that there's probably some way without running afoul of what we intended, which was we did not want majority changing what we worked hard to do. In other words, because there's a new, a current administration or office holders that say, we don't like it, we're going to go back and change. The whole idea was to protect majority and minority voices on the board.
Yes. Yes, sir. And I believe that's the intent.
Okay.
And the other thing is that it has to be voted by a supermajority of the policy board and has to be approved by what the RGV MPO identifies as the 8 key entities, which is Cameron County, Hidalgo County, the cities of Brownsville, Edinburgh, Harlingen, McAllen, Mission, and FAR. And to begin the process, the board today must set a time limit to consider this amendment. And hopefully within that time frame, something can be presented to the board that meets this requirement.
You're saying there has to be a time limit?
Yeah, that's what it says, that the policy board has to set a time limit for the consideration and vote of the amendment to the bylaw. And so it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be 30 days.
But you're not proposing to change the original structure of how the voting
No.
allocation was set?
Well, but if you're saying that there's a time limit because of what that's it. Well, I don't want to cut off the discussion, but I would make a motion to table. Listen, let's get a little bit more information. I want to make sure that we're not jeopardizing anything that we've got established in the MPO bylaws.
I'll second that
It
motion.
sounds fine. I just, right now, when you said that, okay. Ding, ding, ding.
I'll second that motion, Judge.
Right, so we have a motion to table and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item will be tabled. All right, well, then we'll move on to item number 11, agency reports, starting off with TxDOT.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments, and I'm aware that we're running a little late this afternoon already. 2 things that I wanted to bring to the board. Michael alluded to the 2026 UTP. As we speak, there is a virtual public meeting ongoing for the draft 2026 UTP, the 10-year Unified Transportation Program. I encourage all of you all to take a look at the draft that lists projects, if you will, throughout the entire state. Please review, listen to the presentation, review the project listings, and provide any comments for or against and what have you. Please take the time to take a look at the 2026 draft UTP and provide comments accordingly. Second, we are going through an exercise at TxDOT to try and do the level letting, and I'll just try to be brief as I can. Over the last several years, TxDOT has been very aggressive in trying to utilize all available funding in the bank, if you will. And so back in 2023, we had approximately $11 billion in the bank that was available for the state to be utilizing for projects. We were very aggressive in 22, 23, 24, and here in 25, spending respectively or investing respectively 11 billion, 12 billion, 13.7 billion last year, and we're on track to spend 12 billion this fiscal year. With that said, that bank balance has been reduced from 11 billion to approximately 3.3 billion available at this time. Our 2025 UTP had a record of $104 billion available for us over a 10-year period. 104 divided by 10 is approximately $10 billion per year. What we have planned at this time for 2026, 27, and 28 is to the tune of 13.6 billion, 14.7 billion, and 18.6 billion. So obviously, we're over-programmed 3.6 or 3.6, 4.7, and 8.6 billion over the next 3 years. In order for us to meet our cash balance forecast, we, at the state level, have taken on the task of level letting at the district level, level letting on a statewide level. And in order to accomplish that, we had to move some projects around. What's shown up there in that list is 10 projects that were identified by TxDOT and the FAR district in consultation with us, projects that needed to be moved around. There are 3 projects that are going to be actually accelerated forward. Those projects are an overlay project on Interstate 2, roadway expansion from 2 to 6 lanes on FM 2220, otherwise known as Webb Road, and a construction project, US 281 north of San Manuel, to basically upgrade US 281 to interstate standards. Those projects are moving forward or being accelerated. There were a total of 4 projects that are now going to be rescheduled for a later date. Those projects are State Highway 4, down there going towards Boca Chica, FM 1015 south of Ed Couch, US 83, US 83 out in Zapata County, State Highway 68 in the Donna, Alamo, Edinburgh area, FM 3248 in the Brownsville area, and FM 3362 here in the McAllen FAR area. Those projects were going to be rescheduled for a later date. There was one project that is going to be taken out of the UTP, and that project's FM 1426, otherwise known as Raul Longoria in San Juan. In totality, there's going to be a $384 million that's going to be moved as part of this exercise, and that is the FAR district contribution to the overall effort to reduce approximately $14 or so million that we are over program at this time. Bear with me if I go back to my notes here. Want to rest assured that other than FM 1426 Raul Longoria, the funding for the projects still remains. It's just that the letting date has changed in order to meet our cash forecast. This week, we are going to be updating the information that's available to the public to show and reflect the changes that we are proposing. Do want to also point out to the MPO that we are going to be working very closely, TxDOT, with Michael and his team to basically do the necessary updates to the Transportation Improvement Plan, the TIP, for no later than November of 2025, this year. And the intent there is basically making the necessary adjustments to reflect the changes that I just mentioned to you all. There are many, many other projects that were not affected at all that will continue as is as it pertains to delivering those projects. That's a lot of information to take in a short period of time, but I do want to provide an opportunity for me to answer any questions that you all may have.
If I may, Madam Chair. Pete, you said that you were moving Highway 4. And if I'm looking at the information that's on, is that a separate presentation that you were looking at, or is that what we've got on our?
It's the same one.
All right. The lead date was looking at 12/1 of 26. You're moving it basically 7 months, 8 months to 7/2/27. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
And the reason for that change, just for everybody's information, is we're going through the environmental process, environmentally sensitive area, and when that's the date that we feel comfortable with at this time.
That it for our reports? We're good?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. We don't have any closed sessions, so then we will entertain adjournment.
We do.
What?
This is,
I'm sorry, closed session. You have closed session?
Yes.
Oh, we have closed session. We do have closed session.
before we go into that, and it's very minor, but nevertheless, I think it's worth for us to look at. But on the our bylaws say we follow Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm confused on the voting. It's usually a motion, a second, then discussion. And
So
and
yeah,
today
so-
something got kind
yeah.
of off, and I try to follow we can do it any way you want, but I think that's what our bylaws say.
So the bylaws actually don't mention the Robert's Rules of Order, and I think that may be another another point that, yes.
So we have, we'll go ahead and move into closed session. Do we need a motion to move into closed session? To have a motion? Okay, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. We are moving into